Well, good morning, everyone. We hope you had a wonderful night's rest. And you're lucky. The weather is really good right now. And it's this beautiful day today. We're so grateful that you're here. How many were just deeply impacted last night? I just feel like it was absolutely perfect. I just encouraged Pops this morning, told him, said, just felt like it was absolutely perfect what was delivered to us last night. And we just want to go deeper in this. Some of what I feel like the Lord sent me here to do in Mobile is sort of pull the veil back on Pops some. And Pops is a very private man and loves his time with the Lord and alone. And there's sometimes I feel like the Lord sent me here to sort of pull the veil back and let people just peek in a little bit. We're able to do a little podcast together sometimes called Kingdom Conversations that lets that happen. But then we also love to take moments like this and let that happen again. And I don't know if you, but I enjoy being able to peek behind the veil a little bit and see the inner workings of the way people think and what they're doing. I'm the only one, I guess. Okay. But it's really a joy to do it. And so I push him to do these types of things, and he obliges. And so I believe it's for our benefit and for our growth. And so we're grateful. Thank you for doing it again.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. My pleasure.
How many of you, just so I know, this is your first time at a Under the Oaks event like this? Real high. Wow. Okay.
Amazing.
How many of you, you've been here before for one of these? Okay, great. So about 40% new, I guess, 60% have been here before. We're so glad you're here. Well, Pops, just a couple things, even just to break the ice this morning. It's 10:03. I've got a good coffee. I hope you do too.
I do.
Come on. Hallelujah. We both combined slept about 3 hours last night. Me,
That's
3,
exactly
you
right.
none.
Yes.
So we are fired up this morning, ready to go. We are ready to go. So, Pops, tell us a little bit about, just for people that are new here, where are you from? Where were you born?
I was born in the metropolis of Bogalusa, Louisiana.
Okay.
And I know we have some Bogalusa people here.
Okay.
Yep. So I was born in Bogalusa. My dad and mom are from a little town outside of Lake Charles, Louisiana called Oberlin, which is extreme southwest Louisiana, almost Texas. They'll be the only two that are going to shout for Oberlin, but that's my mom and dad.
Hey, can if people don't know them, do you mind if I introduce them?
That'd be great.
Hey,
yeah.
Miss, as I call them, Geba and Boogie.
Yep.
Would do you mind standing and just letting
my mom
people
and
see your
dad.
face and wave at the people?
My mom turned 75 yesterday.
Happy birthday, Mom!
So happy birthday. Yep. Yeah, really cool. But they're from extreme southwest Louisiana, like almost Houston. And then he went to college at McNeese State, went to La Tech for a little while, and then went to McNeese State, graduated from there and got involved in the paper industry. He's a chemical engineer. And one of the paper mills was in Bogalusa. First, they were in Laurel, Mississippi. It's where my older sister Kim was born, Aunt Kim, and then moved to Bogalusa. I was born in Bogalusa and was there until I was 5. And then he transferred to a paper mill in Prattville, Alabama, about 2.5 hours north of here, up I-65. And that's where I grew up, most of my growing up years.
And that's where you would have met, as we affectionately call him, Apostle A.
Yeah, that's correct.
In Prattville,
yes.
as a young...
In Millbrook, a little town right outside Prattville, is a church that we were attending. It brought him in to be the youth minister, and that's where I met him. I met him, I guess, when I was about 10, really got joined to him when I was about 12. So in some sense, we've been together almost 40 years now. And,
wow. Amazing.
Yeah.
And I'm always fascinated by this, but your family has some Cajun heritage.
Yes, that's right.
You had some people in your family that barely spoke English.
Yes, my mother's maiden name is Sonnier, which is spelled Sonnier. Now, how you get Sonnier out of that spelling, you only Cajun would know. But yeah, and then her grandparents were Guillettes. And they were a lot of French influence. Matter of fact, when Tammy first got introduced to my mom's side of the family, she just kind of looked at everybody like she had no idea what they were saying. She's still a little bit like that. We were just around them recently. They live My mother's brother and all of his children live in the Lafayette area of Louisiana, which is Acadiana, real Cajun influence there. So yeah, so there's a strong Cajun. So that's why when I go outside, I turn a different color like the next day. So somebody's like, you have such a good tan. I'm like, that's not a tan. That's ethnicity screaming out. It's what that is, you know. So.
Wow. And just for people who don't know, I just think it's fun. You and Mama T met. You seen her at a baseball game.
That's right. We actually didn't meet at the baseball game. I saw her at the baseball game. She saw me at the baseball game. We had that eye contact moment right here in Mobile at the Bay Bears baseball stadium. It was a AA minor league little baseball deal. And I had received a word from Apostle Aaron that I needed to be home for the month of July, that Yahweh was going to add something significant to my life. And through his instruction and through his leadership, I shut my whole schedule down for the month of July. Then I was an itinerant traveling guy, and July was camp meetings, revivals. And so through his direction, decided to stay home and saw her at a baseball game. And then about 3 or 4 days later, saw her at another baseball game. Then we ultimately ended up meeting at a TGI Fridays, and we're married about 11 months after that. So so that's the quick Cliff Notes story. Yeah.
Wow. Amazing.
23 years been married this year. So
good.
Gonna celebrate for about a year on the 25th wedding anniversary. I might not see us for a while. We're gonna
That's awesome.
go to Fiji and just live it up. So
there you go. And even personally, you turned 50 this year.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel any significance in that?
I do. I feel like, obviously there's a lot of biblical significance to 50 regarding Jubilee and the significance. And I honestly feel like a lot of the significance for me in turning 50 is it's taken me to get to 50 to get back to knowing how to be a child. And I've matured back into childishness is unapproved in the kingdom. Yes. Childlikeness is necessary. And when I was a child, I thought as a child, I spoke as a child, I understood as a child. But when I became a man, I put away childish things. Yet you must become like a child to enter into the kingdom of God. Such is the kingdom of God. And so I feel like 50 is an entrance into another youthfulness, another measure of youthfulness. And I don't have any sort of I don't deal with any sort of midlife crisis nonsense junk. I don't want a Corvette. I'll take one. So there's this baby blue one that I really like over here, by the way. But no, I'm not. I don't. You know what I mean? I'm not looking to get a toupee and a gold chain and start wearing heavy cologne.
Wait a minute, I've got a bald
easy
spot
now.
developing right here.
I do too.
Hang on.
I do too. But that's what hats are for. Yeah. So. No, but I feel like for me, it makes you think. You come up on these birthdays, you just turned 40, so I turned 50, it makes you think. And I think for me, it's this sense of just beginning. This sense of everything's been processed, everything has been re-identification, but he's been rooting us in this revelation, and I feel like we're just getting started. And years ago, I had a very significant leader in my life tell me and Corey Russell were together. Corey's a very good friend of mine. He looked at me and Corey and he said, I know you boys think you're tearing it up right now. He said, but you won't get started until you're 50. You don't really get started until you're 50. And so I feel like there's I'm loving life like I never have before. I'm invigorated. I'm enjoying myself. I'm enjoying doing what I'm doing. And this was labor to me for years. I had what I called a cause consciousness. And God had put this call on my life, and I had to fulfill it, and it didn't matter what I had to plow through to do it. And it was miserable. But I was doing what I felt like I was supposed to do. Now to be in this place where you realize, I wouldn't trade places with anybody on the planet. I'm not doing anything out of a cause consciousness. This is the core of my identity coming out of my mouth when I speak. And so that's hopefully that's working its way into other areas and avenues of my life. But yeah, I do feel like there's something significant about 50. I feel like there's, we came out of the debt where there's no debt here on the ministry. That's significant with 50 here at the church and anyway. And so I feel like it's an increased and a building time. I feel like in my 50th year, my hope is to, purchase the adjoining land, start to build another building. We need this building just for the school school. And so I do feel like there's great breakthrough and increase that comes in that 50th year, you know.
I think that's even good for people to hear here that maybe even around that mark. And when I was thinking about even that question for you, I thought about people that could feel like maybe they've sort of went past their time. And just even to hear from you that at 50, I'm just getting started. I feel like it releases a seed of encouragement to people to
well,
go,
if Isaiah
"Hey,
65 is true, 100 is dying too young. So you have to begin to think in terms of what I call long path consciousness. And if we can embrace this revelation, I read Isaiah 65 not as a hope for the future, but as an invitation for me. I want to live as long as these trees in my city. And there are 300 and 400-year-old oak trees in my city. And we call this under the oaks. And Isaiah, I know people look at that and go, well, that's not what's happening. I don't care what's happening. I'm not here to do what's been done. I'm here to do what eye has not seen and ear has not heard. And so I feel like there's an invitation to say, I don't feel like I'm halfway through my life. I feel like I'm just getting started. And we're going to prove some of these things to be true. Kai Olam, as my apostle taught me, everlasting life is an invitation for the believer. Yep. He who believes in me will never die.
Yes.
He who believes in me will never die. Though he were dead, yet shall he live, and he who believes in me will never die. We can accept that however we want, but I believe there's an invitation in Isaiah 65 for us to read that and go, children, babies are not going to die anymore. Hallelujah. That's the most tragic thing I've had to walk through in my life is people burying their children. And so when you begin to move into an understanding and a revelation that those things don't have to be that way, and the predator in us begins to lie down, and we begin to move into the lamb-like nature, losing our bloodthirst like we talked about last night. I believe in that tenderness, we get regenerated. We get exposed to a measure of presence that affects us on a cellular level, not just on a spiritual one. The cellular level is the spiritual level.
Well, it's interesting because the first question I had from the group here actually had to do with that.
All right.
And that question was after last night in reference to the prophecy in Isaiah 65. This is from an attendee here. Do you think that will take time to come to pass, or is that accessible now?
I think it's been accessible for a long time. I don't think we've been positioned to access it. And part of the necessity of the revelation of beloved righteousness is we don't put promises off into the future. One of the most dangerous things that ever happened to the prophetic movement, which is almost lost all credibility at this point. But one of the most dangerous things that happened to the prophetic movement was the Lord is about to. And that way we couldn't nail anybody down to anything because the Lord's about to do it and it's pretty soon and not long from now. And we missed that there are things accessible now that when we come into beloved righteousness and we read Isaiah 65 through the lens of beloved righteousness, we see it as an invitation in the here and now. When is it going to be accessible? When do we beat our swords into plowshares? When there's no more reason to fight, or when somebody gets a revelation that there is an invitation being extended to us now, and somebody's got to go first. Somebody's got to be, stoned for believing it. And if you're willing to, as a leader, be bold and courageous enough to read Isaiah 65 and say, this is not about heaven. And this is not about life after the return of Christ, because nobody's going to die after the return of Christ. This is about a life that's available in some season, in some eschaton, when we come out of one eschaton and realize we've entered now into a new age, and we are in a new heavens, and we are in a new earth, and we're not waiting on those things to come. Those things are waiting on us to begin to govern them well by way of the revelation of beloved righteousness. So I believe those things are as accessible as our identity will allow us to see. And for those that don't know who they are, those events will always be a future hope. For those who know who they are, they may become a present reality. Yeah. You have to say that with no proof. And that's what prophetic ministry really is. I believe I've heard. I yet don't have the proof, but I'm determined I've heard. I'm determined I've heard. Whew, man. Dying sucks. Death sucks. Burying people, I'm tired of it. I'm tired of it. I'm tired of it, and I don't really want to plan my own funeral. Been through a health crisis and planned it in my mind several times. We're not doing that anymore. So I'm introducing people to a measure of life, into a measure of beloved righteousness that's causing something to happen on the inside of them. How long would we live if we no longer had the stress of religion cracking a whip over our heads? Maybe the reason we're dying prematurely is because religion has stressed us out so significantly that we don't know how to function inside of peace and rest. Peace and rest is a gate to longevity. And religion is the enemy of peace and rest. Oh, man, thank you, Lord. Whew. Whew.
I'm just waiting to see if there's another flow or I need to move on.
If Enoch didn't have to die under an if Enoch didn't have to die under an inferior covenant, there could be a measure of walk for us, that we're able to cause this distinct line to blur a little bit, and we don't know where there's such a difference between the here and the there. After all, if his kingdom comes on earth as it is in heaven, and nobody in heaven is dying, then there is a measure of the kingdom that can cause us to see and do life differently. And I understand the measure of persecution that comes with that, because for many, the only hope of glory they have is heaven. But I have a hope to be glorious. And I have a hope to be glorious now. And I have a hope for my children to be glorious. And I want to be here to see my children move into the fullness of the measure of their glory. And God knows what the generation after that's going to look like. And some of us need to understand that our inheritance is to be present when these generations move into the fullness of all they've been promised. So I am done now, so you can go ahead and do it.
Wow.
If all the good stuff, I wasn't done. If all of the good stuff is reserved for heaven, it's not Jesus that saves us, it's dying that does. And we really have set up that the hope is to die and go to heaven. And I've been talking a lot about Romans. Nowhere in Romans 8 does Paul ever mention heaven. Nowhere in the book of Romans anywhere does Paul ever talk about dying and going to heaven. And nowhere in any of Paul's correspondence period is the idea of dying and going to heaven. What there is the idea of is glory. Those he predestined, he called. Those he called, he justified. And those he justified, he glorified. Doxazo, it's the people who are dressed in the royal splendor, who are shining as the cities set on a hill that cannot be hidden, that you don't take that kind of light and hide it. And I don't think you take that kind of light and kill it.
I feel like that leads me to this. This is not on the page, but how much then does the issue of eschatology play a role in that view? And what you feel for the future.
Yeah, no, it's huge. I think that I would love to. There's probably nothing more important in framing my kingdom vision outside of my very Christology than my eschatology. But the reason I don't, and people want me to rush into that because we love that, don't we? We love to talk about the end time stuff, and I get to be careful that I don't scratch an itching ear. Because what people actually need, I don't think the people following me right now need eschatology yet. I think they need soteriology. I think more than anything, they need to understand that for which they have been saved. And when they understand that for which they have been saved, then they begin to develop a kingdom view. However, if I have the sense that all of this is moving toward a speedy and tragic end, then I will let irresponsibility become virtuous. And rather than caring for the planet, it'll become a virtue, as a famous Pentecostal theologian said, not to polish the brass on a sinking ship or not to rearrange the furniture on the Titanic. If you think it's going down and you think it's going down quickly, first of all, you're as wrong as the last 7 generations before you have been, all of which thought there's no way they would die before the Lord returned. So eschatology is important. Eschatology simply meaning a study of the end of things. But I think if we don't understand, have a significant understanding that Jesus was right in the Olivet Discourse when he said, these things will happen quickly. you will not have finished going into all of the towns before these things come to pass. He then goes on to say, not only will they happen quickly, but they will happen in Judea. Jerusalem will be surrounded about with horses. And so when we begin to understand those things, we can begin to read Revelations differently, which is not a tragic picture of an end to come, but it's a picture of the ending, not of the earth. The Bible never talks about the end of the earth or world. It's eon. It's the end of an age, and the age was the Judaistic age. The Judaistic age has come to an end. We have moved into a new creation, a new heavens and a new earth that is looking for us to establish this new Jerusalem. And from that capital city, we go from Jerusalem to Judea to Samaria to the uttermost parts of the world with this gospel of the kingdom. And the Bible says when this gospel of the kingdom is preached, then the end will come. Well, we know the gospel was preached to the known world inside of that day, and we had tremendous fruit from that gospel of the kingdom being preached. That end has come. And rather than us thinking in terms of the end times, we need to begin to think in terms of a new anthropology. And not a Western moralized anthropology, but an anthropology where we begin to understand our sonship and begin to build culture in relation to the understanding of who we are as the beloved of the Father. So to answer the question, eschatology is extremely important because eschatology sets us to think in terms of the long path. If I'm dreaming about, if we don't get this done right now, I'll start panicking over elections. Because this is the one, and if this one doesn't work out, and I've had people say things like that to me, if we don't get this stolen election overturned, America as we know it is over. I'm going, my God, man. Yeah. That's right. Seriously? What kind of hope is this? And you know what it is? It's an impoverished eschatology that believes we're at the end, and if we don't get this figured out, the earth's going to freeze or burn up. Yeah. And the truth of the matter is the environmental issues that we're facing today are issues of the suns failing to be fully unveiled. It's not, the problem is not fracking oil wells, and the problem is not you driving a diesel. The problem is the earth is moving towards decay because so are you and I. We can't tell the earth not to die when we're planning on it. So it ties back into the original question of the Isaiah 65. If you and I can understand that we can move into a state of rest and assurance that changes us on a cellular level, we're going to be able to announce to creation, she can begin to go about the process of her regeneration as well. That's Romans 8, groaning and travailing for what? The manifestation of the sons of God. When we begin to be revealed, the earth begins to respond. As long as religion has us trapped in slavery to futility, the planet has no choice but to follow suit, because we were not designed to follow the planet was designed to follow us. And when Adam lost his way, so did creation. So eschatology is extraordinarily important. I think much of the teaching on eschatology is hot air. Well, most of the teaching we get is demonic. But even beyond that, I think a lot of it is hot air, where we want to go into charts and timelines to prove we're right about things. I have no interest in proving I'm right about things because and this is why, and I'm rambling, I know, but I have no jealousy for the term millennial. Post-millennial, pre-millennial, amillennial. They took one word out of one verse in one of the most obscure chapters in the whole Bible, in the most obscure book in the whole Bible, and made all of our eschatology have to fit into how the millennium is going to work out. And so I disconnect my eschatology from post, pre, or amillennial, and I begin to move my eschatology in alignment with Christology. What did Yeshua say was going to happen now that there was a new heavens and a new earth? And when we begin to look at it in terms of that, I think we can begin to look at it and go, I'm not just building for me and my destiny and my future, I'm building for generations. And if you don't have a right eschatology, you'll always have an impoverished generational consciousness. But when you begin to think in terms of eschatology, then you go, the most important thing I'm doing in the earth is not my personal ministry. It's the people sitting right here, these sons, sitting across the front. It's this generation that's coming behind us and pouring our lives into them to give them permission to think differently in regards to their soteriology, and them to begin to believe, hey, we're about to see some things pop. We're about to see some things happen in the earth. So eschatology is really important. I think oftentimes the teaching of eschatology is generally aimed towards people who have an itch for that already. Sure. And I don't want to scratch the itch people have for that. People try to force me into that prematurely all the time. Talk to us about the eschatology. Well, talk to us because you want to be able to argue the eschatology. And I'm not trying to give you ammunition to argue eschatology. I want to get you rooted in your beloved identity. You can move from there. And the eschatology thing's going to work out regardless. What we need is to be sons enough to understand the role we're supposed to play in the fulfillment of the eschatological promise.
All right, you're dismissed. Chew on that for a little while. Tell us why the word union is one of the most important words in your vocabulary.
I think it goes back to soteriology. I think I was saved from the assumption of separation, which brought about functional division. And what Jesus did for me is not primarily save me from hell. He saved me from sin. Hamartia. So he saved me from forsaking the blueprint of my original identity. And when he restored back my original identity, that restoration brought about him not just saving me in a legal sense, but carrying me and sharing with me the fellowship of the Father and the Son in the Spirit. That's what we call perichoresis, the circle dance. And when we're carried back into that fellowship, we begin to understand it. That's one of the things I love about the Passion Translation is a lot of words that are with or a lot of words that are relationship begin to be translated by Dr. Simmons' union. Because union carries about the sense of not just being with, but being joined to, and being so joined to that you become one, and the without moves into the within, and the within moves into the without, and we get the great declaration that in that day you will know that I am in the Father, I'm in my Father, you are in me, and I am in you. And so union to me just announces what I have ultimately been called to, even as a leader. Yeah. That I don't think of myself in fivefold terminology. I really don't. You and I have talked about that many times. I refuse to allow myself to be identified by something that's nothing more than a gift. Apostle, prophet, evangelist, pastor, and teacher is not offices. If you were taught that, you were taught wrong. I have given to them some apostles, some prophets. They're gifts given to the body of Christ to equip us till we come into the full stature of the measure of the fullness of Christ. So they're union giftings. They're giftings to be able to bring us into a measure of union. What identifies me, I'm a worshiper. That's me. I'm a man fascinated with the eyes of the Father. And I want that to be what identifies me, not the function I have within a congregational setting. But I understand the importance of that, and I understand the role that I've been called to play there. But none of that has any bite if I'm not a union man first. And so for me, it is to live in this lifestyle of relationship that you know, when so many things were mistranslated. They were doing the best they could, obviously, but so many things were mistranslated. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. You know, that word is pros, and it's embarrassing to call it with. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was face to face, or you could translate pros, mouth to mouth. So in the beginning, what we knew about God is he was never solitary. And Athanasius's big stance was to come against Arianism, which was a doctrine created by Arius, that Jesus was the highest of God's created things. And the problem with that, as Athanasius saw, was that you will then have a time where God was solitary, God was alone, and God was other. It didn't mean God wouldn't have the capacity to love, but it did mean God couldn't be love, because love requires another in order to love. Agape, by definition, is other-centered, self-giving love. So for Yahweh to have always been agape, Yahweh always had to have another to love. And so there's always been this sense within the Trinitarian fellowship of union. And what you and I have been invited into is not Christianity. It's so much greater than that. We've been invited into not a set of doctrines. We've been invited into shared experience and encounter. And John said, if you learn to abide in union, you can ask anything. And it'll be done for you. And Isaiah 65 said, before you get done asking it, it'll already begin to be answered. So our movement toward union is our movement toward the miraculous, the supernaturals, the breakthroughs we thought we would get to as we just continued on the path of normal, and they didn't come. And I think you have to have the humility and wisdom to say, saying the same thing over and over again long enough doesn't bring the breakthrough. There has to be a repentance. There has to be a metanoia, a changing, an evolving of the way that we think. And that's why I even look at how faith works and the principles of faith. And some of the people that I know that know the most about faith might not be the people I'd call on if I was sick. It might be somebody who's not an expert on faith, but is an expert on love. And so now you get a group of people who are going to get an understanding of faith that worketh by love. And we're going to begin to see some of the fodder and the fuel that's already been laid for faith begin to come alive and be ignited by people who understand their revelation of agape. So to me, I say union is the most important word in my spiritual life. And that's that. I don't have a super close second, because union for me, that's why we're going to call it Union University. What we've got coming here. For me, union expresses something more than relationship. I remember the old cliche in the 80s, it's not religion, it's relationship. And I would hear the word relationship and go, I get it. But I I don't call my wife and I having a relationship. You know what I mean? Maybe when we were dating, we had a relationship. Now we have oneness. The man shall leave his father and mother and cleave unto his wife, and the two shall become one. And so we get that inside of the bridegroom revelation, which I always try to emphasize when we're teaching theosis or kenosis or whatever it is that we're teaching, even in our anthropology or soteriology. I want to emphasize, I want to go overboard in emphasizing that what we're talking about here is not developing new and better doctrines. Because we can get as trapped in our doctrinal certitude as the generation before us was trapped in their doctrinal certitude. So the aim is not doctrinal certitude. The aim is to so trust in the measure of union and fellowship that we've been brought into that we may move beyond simply having a relationship and we move into oneness. And so union is the word for me. It's a word of connection. It's a word of tethering. It's a word of, being joined and jointed until every joint supplies. And I think if I can appropriately enter into union with him, I can have appropriate union with you. Absolutely. But I think to aim at appropriate union with you when I'm not in appropriate union with him just creates more futility. I said to Mark Castor recently, I'm done trying to walk in unity with people who have rejected their invitation to perichoresis. If they don't want the circle dance, it's futile for me to try to have a relationship with them so I can be considered ecumenical.
For those that are just hearing this, or they're coming upon this message of beloved identity for the first time, someone was asking, in your mind, if they're hearing this and they're going, I'm absorbing it here, but I'm not absorbing it here. Mm-hmm. What would you say to the person that says, I'm hearing what you're saying? Because we had somebody ask that. I'm hearing what's being said, and I'm absorbing it here. But here, I don't feel like I have a grasp of it.
Then take what you're hearing from me and bring it to him. Because he takes it from here to here, not me. And so you take what you're hearing and say, this struck me, Father. What do I do with it? And the Holy Spirit does not speak of himself, but he takes of what is Jesus's and he renders it to you. And beloved, identity is Jesus sharing his identity with us, and the Holy Spirit will take that and put it into you. These people think, what are you reading? I'm not, man. You know this about me. I'm not getting this because I'm reading 15 books, and I don't ever listen to a podcast. I listen to my kids on a podcast. That's phenomenal. But I don't listen to podcasts. I don't listen to a lot of preaching. I listen to some audio books if I'm driving. I read a lot, but I read the Bible mostly. But this is a revelation that has to come by way of a whisper. And a lot of people are hearing something intellectually that's not actually an academic word to you. It's a transformative word that really won't work. And people are trying to go repeat it and say what they've heard said, and it hasn't gotten into the heart yet. I started walking this stuff with 2009, didn't talk about any of it till 2014, and didn't really talk about any of it fully until I come out of my health crisis. And the Lord said, now you're ready. Now you're ready to begin to release this. And as I begin to release it in full, I flirted with it and talked about it, and it reformed a lot of other things I believed. But the full announcement of it didn't come because I had heard it and believed it intellectually. It had to become incarnational. And that doesn't happen in a meeting. The meeting is the provocation for you to go to the secret place and to say, here's what I believe I've heard. I want you to take it, Holy Spirit, and render unto me the things that are meant to be a part of my life. And then it becomes more than information. It becomes incarnational. So the revelation of beloved righteousness is incarnational for me. It has changed my personality. It has done far more to change me than, the fear of not following the rules ever could have done.
For the person who is walking through even the language that you have used, the dark night of the soul, what a person asked, what is your sort of advice on the endurance that is needed? Like, how do they endure and walk through that dark night of the soul?
I don't know that you endure the dark night of the soul so much as you surrender. That's not my term. That's St. John of the Cross, who told us of the dark night of the soul. I believe in the dark night of the soul, you're probably not being invited to war as well as you are being invited to yield. I think the quicker you can tap out, you come into the rest that postures you to have the power of the highest overshadow you, so that the holy thing that can be born in you can be born. I was in my dark night of the soul. Physically, I couldn't lift my hands. I couldn't pull myself up by my bootstraps. I had done that so well. Maybe not well. I had done that. I had been so disciplined to be strong and tough and enough, and to lean on my own endurance and to lean on my own willpower. And then you get to the place where all that's stripped from you. And if it's not all stripped from you, you can't call where you are the dark night of the soul. Don't demean that term by acting like while you're there you have something to offer. If you still have something to offer, you might be in a darker night than you were, but you're not in the dark night. Because in the dark night, you have nothing to do but say, Abba, I belong to you. I fall recklessly into your hands, and I have lost all charge and control of myself, and I believe that you are who you said you are, or I'm going to die believing that. And that's there. I believe that's the sweet spot where the Father says, there you are. And in my weakness, in your weakness, my strength is made perfect. Not by might, nor by power, but by my Spirit, says the Lord. And so I just really think there's a place where you go, I surrender. Not my will, but yours be done, is the cry of the dark night of the soul. And it's really in the dark night of the soul that most of us are the most fully and appropriately prepared to become who it is that we cried out for. I'll say this to you. The dark night of the soul is your own fault because you asked for it. So that's because I did. I said outrageous things like, Lord, whatever it takes. I'm a little more careful. I wouldn't take anything for it. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. But I wouldn't take anything for it because it was so important for me to come to the end of myself. You can't come to yourself until you've come to the end of yourself. And when the prodigal had come to himself, come to the end of himself, he said within himself, I will arise and go to my father's house. If you try to go through the dark night of the soul as a leader, you'll fail. But if you can go through the dark night of the soul as a child, he'll carry you to the end of it. And you'll come out on the other side of it with something in your eyes that could actually make you worth following 1,000 times more than anything you could ever preach in a pulpit or in a sermon. If we could give the earth the glow of wholeness, people would gravitate toward us in such a way that we'd not have room enough to receive them. But we're still trying to attract people through the bait of our gifts. And it's not ultimately the gifts that have called people to rally from all over the place. It's the witness of wholeness. And people saying, I believe I can have a marriage like that. I believe my kids can burn for God like that. I believe we can have generational connection. I believe I can stand in a room with a spiritual father I've walked with for 40 years and spiritual sons that have now walked with me for 20 years and know that these are not some short-term fly-by-night relationships. These really are this is something being established that is a kingdom progeny. And I feel something when we have these gatherings, Brent. I feel something so patriarchal. Yes. And I think if I could say to the individual that is in that place of the dark night of the soul, trust. I just want to say that. You will come out on the other side of this with a second conversion that you may see as more valuable than your first one. And the second conversion is not you being converted into believing, it's you being converted into trusting. And I trust him now. And I'm at peace. I could say like Paul, none of these things move me. I don't mean that like I hope it's not like I'm trying to be arrogant, man. I am at peace. I am at peace. I don't spend the night in toil anymore. They toiled through the night and rather caught nothing. But when he showed up on the bank, he said, this effort to be productive outside of an appropriate measure of presence is nothing but you spinning your wheels. And the more you spin, come on, country folk, the more you spin your wheels, the deeper stuck you end up. Right? You know what you need? You need somebody to come tether themselves to you that is not stuck, and they'll be able to pull you out. Simon, the devil has desired to have you, that he might sift you as wheat, but I have prayed for you that your faith would not fail, so that when you come through this, you'll be able to reach back and unstick your stuck brethren because you've walked a little bit ahead in the journey. And I hope that's what we're able to be to leaders even on a week like this.
I feel that grace being extended to people right now. Why don't we just lift our hands just in this moment? I feel that grace being extended. Mikotora baba sibidi ondo bora bela mai ondo basora mama idikio mavondoro do boko sabra mama maya mondo do boko ndalidi kio kora babaka ando baba. I tell you that you're going to do more than make it. It's going to be glorious on the other side. I tell you that you're going to do more than survive, and you're going to do more than endure. But you're going to find out that none of it is worthy to be compared to the glory that shall be revealed in us. And when you come out on the other side of this, you'll have peace that surpasses all understanding and joy that is unspeakable and full of glory. And you will be cities set on a hill that cannot be hidden. So I bless you this day to go to sleep. Get a new dream. The only prerequisite for a dream is that you go to sleep first. We've been trying to awaken some people that we first need to call into rest. Come into rest. Take a deep breath. He is watching over his word to perform it. Take a deep breath. Heaven and earth may pass away, but the word of the Lord will stand forever.
Take a deep breath. No weapon formed against you will be able to prosper, and every tongue that rises against you in judgment will be condemned. Take a deep breath. If God be for you, who can be against you? For the battle is not yours, but the battle belongs to the Lord. How would you act if you believe the battle belonged to the Lord? You can put your sword down, get the smile back on your face, and get the skip back in your step, because you know all of this is being worked together for good by my Father. I, for years in error, believed that being agitated was part of what helped make me powerful. I did. And there's a lot of people who wish I was still agitated, so in their mind I could still be as powerful as I was when I was agitated. You don't birth fruit out of agitation. You create more chaos. If there's chaos in here, you have nothing to give but chaos. If there's rest in here, you have nothing to give but rest. And there is no cause that justifies chaos. No assignment is so big that panic is permitted. So rest. And out of that seat of rest, you'll get a better dream. Oh man, you get a better dream. The better dream is not just something better coming to pass. It's something coming to pass with less self-effort. And that's where I am. I mean, we're here in Mobile and we're not making it happen. You know, there's a lot of things we could be doing. I mean, God knows I could do a lot of things better to do a better job helping facilitate what the Lord is doing. But I've come to the place where I realized that if people need me to facilitate their growth, then it's not coming organically. And if I facilitate their growth, I'll be responsible for sustaining it. But if I can create an environment and build a culture, then he'll be the one who begins the good work. And if he begins the good work, he'll be faithful and just to complete it. If I begin the good work, I find out I have to be faithful, and I'm not as faithful as he is. My faith is now in his faithfulness. Sarah's faith rested in the one who made the promise, and she tapped into his faithfulness. The authority of her faith rested in the one who made the promise. There is no authority in faith that is not at rest, because restlessness is a witness against faith. The authority of her faith rested in the one who made the promise, and she tapped into his faithfulness. In my health crisis, I couldn't get out of the house. I couldn't move. I couldn't hold a toothbrush. I couldn't zip my zipper. These things were physically happening to me. I had men gather around me as my muscles withered. My left calf is probably still 2 inches smaller in diameter than my right one from these things going on physically. I still parts of my body I have no feeling in from what I went through during that season. But I had men, you were one of them, many of these in here were others of them, that would literally come alongside me and physically hold my arms up while we prayed. And I'm telling you, you may think that being a lonely wanderer is freedom, but you better find somebody who can pull you out of the mud. Two are better than one, for if the one fall down, he can help his brother. One puts 1,000 to flight, but two 10,000. And this walking in isolation in the name of I'm more prophetic and more spiritual than everybody else is a recipe for disaster. We're going to talk about that tonight, so I don't have to get on that too hard. But we're going deep in tonight against some of this idea that we can be vagabonds and have authority. Having a home is your license to rule and reign. If you can't be seated, you can't rule. I don't care how much anointing you have on your life. Amen. I will also say regarding the dark night of the soul, if you're there, heaven has given you its highest compliment. Because heaven would never let you go there if you weren't going to make it. And heaven would never let you go there if there was not something extraordinary that you were going to lead in the days to come. So take it as a compliment. Yeah. Opposition is flattery. Opposition, I've been saying this for how many years, Brent? Opposition is the prophetic indicator of potential. And there's great potential in you. If there's been great grief, if there's been great sorrow, if there's been great disappointment, today let's redeem it. And let's convert the grief into assurance that the Father is going to do far more with me than I ever would have allowed him to do in me had I not been through the pain. But I will not waste the pain. It will be converted for somebody else's restoration and breakthrough. Wow. Thank you, Lord. Whew. We'll have to have a kingdom conversation after this just to cover all the, you know what I mean? Next week or so, we'll do another one. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What role does silence and stillness play in your life with God?
That's a fantastic question. Not that the other ones were not, but I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. But I spent the first half of my ministry hurting people's feelings. I'm trying not to do that as often now as I did. Hurting people's feelings made me a lot of money. I'm telling you, it did. People loved it. You hit them and they write you a check. You slap them and they write you another check. It's amazing. Bit of a masochistic influence there, but whatever you're into. So anyway, I would say that there is a place that I'm discovering. I don't ever want to announce that I'm fully there. There is a place that I'm discovering in union where language is far less important than it was in another season. And I think you get that way in marriage. I think you get that way where you can communicate through a look. You can know what the person's going to think before they even say it. And that's a kind of the outworking of union. I believe for me, I've come to understand that there is a place in union that is beyond what I would have in another season identified as prayer. I'm not now saying it's not prayer. I'm saying it's beyond my impoverished interpretation of prayer, which is not me hitting my list and feeling guilty if I don't hit my list and believing we won't get breakthrough if I don't consistently hit my list. I still have a list, still have things I'm believing and contending for right now. However, I'm learning to allow the lifestyle of prayer to be one in such that I am comfortable in sitting still with him or laying on this floor with him for extended hours and not feeling like prayer is in order to accomplish something. But understand that this is my time on the wheel where the Father is shaping me as much as he is looking for me to give a decree in order for him to answer it. And so, the Father, up until now, you have not prayed anything in my name. That's what Yeshua said. And he also goes on to say then that the Father knows what you have need of before you ask him. How would we pray if we took no thought for tomorrow? We're not, one of the enemies of prayer is an inability to be present. And prayer is either us going back and saying I shouldn't have and I'm sorry and I never will again. Or Lord, please don't let the future turn out like this. But in my own life, I'm learning more and more how to receive the grace to be present. And in receiving the grace to be present, how to be present in prayer, which for a lot of the time for me now is silence. Silence works best in solitude. And so I try to have extended seasons where I'll go away to be alone with the Lord. I make Tammy come with me most of the time on my getaways. Now, every once in a while I get away by myself. I used to get away by myself more. I found now that the quality of my time with the Lord is enhanced if she's there. That's something Paul was wrong on. So, well, I'll get in trouble for saying this. Paul had no understanding of marriage. And he doesn't say, Paul's clear. Paul's clear in 1 Corinthians that he's not speaking for God.
Sure.
He says, this is my opinion. Yeah. So I'm not affecting your, Bible idolatry. So bibliolatry, as the early church fathers called it. So I'm not meaning to affect that, but he's saying this is my opinion. And in my opinion, Paul's opinion was that you had to be single in order to be fully focused. Wow. And I disagree with that. I disagree with Paul on that. And I think there was a lack of understanding, maybe even culturally, of what marriage looked like then and what the kingdom marriage has evolved into by way of us understanding the value of women instead of diminishing women as just people that are there to serve man. But we begin to understand the withness and the inness of the value of the woman and how she comes alongside me and helps become this infusion for my walk with God, not something that because I have to take care of her, I can't focus on God. First of all, she don't need me to take care of her. I made sure I didn't marry a woman that needed me to take care of her because I didn't want to have to be taken care of. That's what you do for children. I married a woman who could take care of me and her. I did. And so I love that the Lord is, I love that the Lord is teaching our culture. Oh man, because we had a moment in here some time ago where it was like the Pentecostal power of prayer hit. We didn't aim at that. Right. Nobody saw that coming, but boy, didn't we? It was glorious, and we were birthing something in Pentecostal prayer for a while. I didn't come in here the next day and try to replicate that. That's right. But to hear by the Spirit. And sometimes the Spirit is asking for that bold decree and declaration. Other times he's asking you just to rest in silence. So to make one more valuable than the other is error. The key is to learn what the Spirit is wanting to do through you and to learn to cooperate by way of union with the Spirit. So for me, I'll say this to you. I've never read a book that impacted me as much as sitting in silence with Him. I've never listened to a worship song that moved my heart as much as sitting in silence with Him. And so this idea that we justify, especially leaders, we justify franticness based on the size of the assignment, and we keep ambient noise going on in our ears all the time. I put earbuds in generally when I fly, unless I'm flying with my family. I put earbuds when I fly, but it's not because I'm listening to anything. It's because of what I don't want to listen to. I don't listen to things when I put them in, but I put them in because there are things I don't want to listen to. Mainly the conversation with the extrovert that I'm always going to end up sitting next to on the airplane that read the book about how to win friends and influence people. You are not going to win me as your friend. I don't care how many books you read. Stephen Covey's not going to sit next to me and win me as his friend. I can tell you right now. Yeah, and then he's going to try to sell me some Arbonne, so he can get me on their list so they can get a little trickle-down effect, so the devil. So, yeah, exactly. I'll get that pink Lexus and Mary Kay, sell me some Mary Kay. So, I love silence. I love solitude. I love the importance of that. And I love to see leaders come into a space where the drive to accomplish gets enveloped in the hunger to receive love. And you don't receive love by accomplishment. You receive love by way of rest. And I think it multiplies the grace on your life for accomplishment. But I think people who set the bar and standard of how they receive love is based on how much they accomplish. It'll always rob them from the silence and the stillness of being what we call alone with the alone. And in that sweet spot of that, so. I'm good to roll, so don't stop on my account. Okay. I'm enjoying this.
This is a question written in by an attendee here.
Okay.
I'm a young husband and father
Yes.
with two small children. I also pastor. How do I encourage and establish my kids in love for Jesus as they grow and to go further than I have.
That's a good question. Great question, too. First of all, I love the order of the question. I'm a husband, I'm a father, and oh, by the way, I'm a pastor. And that's a huge statement to let me know, whoever wrote that question, you're going to be good. You're going to be good. The most important gift you can ever give to your children, naturally or spiritually, is an intense love affair with their mother. Until it makes them uncomfortable at times. I love that woman, and they know I love that woman, and they don't hear me raise my voice to her. They don't see me dishonor or mistreat or disrespect her. And so in that, I think the bride, my sons who are called to be brides, learn how a bride is to be entreated by an inferior husband. And it gives them grace to open their hearts to the superior husband who loves well at all times. And so really what I hope anyway, my kids could probably answer this better than me, but I hope the least important thing I ever give to my kids is what I do in here a couple hours a week. It's a lifestyle that we live. And I think one of the best gifts Tammy and I have been able to give Elijah and Judah, I don't want to take a ton of credit for Elijah and Judah. Elijah and Judah are who they are. By the grace of God, Paul said, I am what I am. And they are phenomenal boys. And I did enough, I'm sure, to abort their greatness if it was just on me. But I thank God it wasn't. And I've exposed them to the glory of God. If you're trying to get your kids to love God in a place where they despise going to church, it's going to have a really, really, really negative impact on them. I've seen kids coming with no appetite for the things of God, and in 2 weeks, I've seen kids come in here determined to fight against it. That's right. These other kids might get in here and go after God and cry and shake in the altar, but I'm not going to be one of them, and it's irresistible. You find the place where the river is moving and you plant your family there. It's far more important than they be in the right place than you be leading. Yes, sir? You might testify to that. I want my kids in the middle. The other thing that I think we've done well, is we're happy. And my kids know how much Tammy and I love God and how much we've given ourselves to whatever it cost to walk with God, and yet they see us having a blast. And I think that's part of the thing is too many people who went before me, in not Apostle Aaron, but other people that I had seen kind of heroes in the faith, they were miserable. I got around them. I mean, green rooms almost made me cynical, because I realized these people are one person when they're in front of a camera and thousands of people, and they get back in the back and their wife doesn't want to make eye contact with them. If she does, we literally have been there and watched the wife roll her eyes when her husband says spiritual things. And Tammy would bail out on the whole thing and hang in the green room with the wives and love on the wives, because your heart's broken for that. Not always, but too often. And so I would say that we're happy. I mean, we're joyful. Our life feels like a party. We're happy. We're always laughing. We're not doing the yelling and the slamming doors and the fighting, and we just don't operate that way. We just live in a place of real joy and fulfillment. And I think our boys have enough wisdom to know that is because of Jesus, because they lived with me when I was agitated. And they lived with me when they had to walk on eggshells to make sure you didn't set Dad off. Everybody getting quiet now like I'm the only one. Piss on y'all. Yeah. Had to walk on eggshells and make sure you don't set Dad off. And vacation's miserable because Dad's so stressed out that I can't even enjoy a vacation, And I hope they've seen that turn. And then I have had the gift of my sons becoming my kids' heroes. And they get to have your phone number. They get to have Matt's phone number. And, it's just crazy, man. It's Uncle Mark. I don't know how my sons became their uncles, but we're in Alabama, so anything's possible. But it is. There's a sense of family where they've looked at this and gone, their principal marriage models are in here, and they watch these other men that are not casually going after the things of God. They've paid a tremendous price to go after the things of God, and they look at them and go, now those guys look like they have the life I want. That's a life worth emulating. I'll take what Matt and Jamie Brown have. Give me that. Take what Uncle Mark and Aunt Des have, but give me that. I'll take that. And when it's that way, then I believe that's one of the things that gives them such a sense of why would we look for life in something else? These people have found the mystery hidden from the ages, Christ in you, the hope of glory. And so I love the way the question was even staged. I'm a husband. I'm a father of 2 young kids. You're good. You're good. You're good. Because you're not a pastor trying to figure out how to make family work. You're a family man, and the pastoring thing will have to take care of itself.
Speaking of your kids, to lighten the mood just a little bit.
Oh, please, Lord.
What is tethered clothing?
Oh, God, my son.
What is tethered clothing company?
So my sons, now this is the Lord. My sons, go ahead.
So I have an actual card with that question on it from one of his sons. Judah came up to me last night. Judah came up to me last night and said, "Hey, will you give us a shout out tomorrow?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "Do it for me." I said, "For my mind." I said, "Write it on a card for me so I have it." And before I could even get it, he pulled it out of his pocket, went like this. He said, "What is tethered clothing?" I said, "I got you, bro. I got you."
So in essence, they're pimping the old man out right now is what's happening. So you see it on my drink here. They put this on me in my office last night so all of you could get a visual. My sons are super creative. And I was having a conversation with this recently with the Lord, and Elijah writes songs. I mean, he writes them all the time. Wrote an amazing worship song in the Starbucks drive-through line. I'm like, that's not really something I do. And Judah is hyper creative around like fashion, and he has an eye for fashion. He has a boldness and a creativity, but what he really has is a confidence to not care what you think about what he has on. He likes it. And that's beloved identity. And so beloved identity has stirred this thing in him to where he is creating his own fashion line. And the name of it is Tethered Clothing. What's the website? Tetheredclothing.com. Tetheredclothing.com. Ethan has come alongside him and is helping him with marketing and with photography and getting some of the stuff out. And so Ethan Townsend, and then Judah, my youngest son, Judah Thompson, Judah's birthday is April the 10th. Judah turned 16 on April the 10th. So on April the 10th, they're going to launch the first shirts, which will be like a limited release. I'm getting one for free, right? Okay, I'm just ask that in front of the crowd because they're like $90 for a T-shirt, but they're limited release.
Mama T said they won't give her one.
No, she doesn't get one. She had to pay for her sticker, I think. Yeah.
Mighty God.
Yeah.
Mighty God. Businessmen.
Yeah. And they'll release how many of the first T-shirts are there? 30. And those will be a limited release. And then they have ordered all the equipment to make their own shirts and print their own shirts. And so they're going to be releasing more clothing. And the concept is that a people would be so confident in who they are in God that they'd be able to express themselves with fashion that reflects who they are and not have to be worried about the fear of man and how it reflects on other people. And tethered, of course, has to do with the revelation that, we're tethered to one another, that I made a decision. For me, tethered means at 12 years of age, I made the decision to tether myself to an apostle and would not allow any circumstance or situation to untether me. And here we are. because of being tethered, and they're tethered in that way to one another. This the Elijah and Judah are tethered together in the amazing relationship they have as brothers, and Elijah supports everything Judah does. And Elijah's creativity is in the realm of music. He wrote a song about one of his friends recently that you should ask him to play for you. He played it for me last night. He had a friend that got in a little bit of trouble, so in order to haze the friend for getting in a little bit of trouble, he wrote a song about it. And it involved Twisted Tea and some mid girls is the part I remember about it. So, so that's how much they love each other. And if you drink Twisted Tea, you deserve to have a song written about you. I'm just going to tell you that right now. So they're super creative and tethered clothing. They're going to launch these T-shirts, and I know you've already sold quite a few of them, huh? Quite a few. They've got these stickers. They'll sell you, I'm sure. They'll sell you a sticker and probably autograph it for you for extra, So, but yeah, that's tethered clothing. I'm super excited about it because it's something there of training up a child in the way he should go. Absolutely. Every preacher wants to make their kids a preacher, and I've heard Judah preach. And there is no question of the depth of that's in him, haven't we, Jason and Misty? We've heard Judah preach. And so we've heard Elijah preach, and we've heard Elijah sing and lead. And so those things are in them. But, one day I was praying, this short ending to this. One day I was praying, and I said, Lord, it's fascinating the kids are so creative, that you put that in them. And he said, you don't think you're creative? And I said, no. My talent was throw ball far. Me throw ball far. And so, me hit you hard. Sounded like. Even in basketball, I hit you just as hard in basketball as I did in football. I fouled out more than anybody in the history of Alabama sports. I'm telling you, you take a charge on me once. From then on, that you have PTSD because I leave the basketball behind and just make you pay the price. So. I flipped a kid over the trophy table one time in a tournament because he tried to take a foul on me. I just went full linebacker on him, but I the Lord said, you write every day, and you'll let a bunch of musicians who sing cover songs tell you they're creative, and you're not. You are covering something somebody else wrote, and you're creative. But we craft these things every week and hear from the Lord. And so the Lord said, you got to take some of that creativity back from artistic people who think the only way to be creative is in this one particular area, and begin to understand all those that hear and release what they're hearing. Doesn't matter if you got a paintbrush in your hand or a pen, there's something creative happening on the inside of all of us. If you're, the people who poured the concrete out here and built the fence, and there's something of creativity in all of us. And we got to kind of recapture that from some insecure artist who kind of created this line that said, we're over here and y'all are over there. We're right brain and you're left brain. And we're like, well, I'm going to use my whole brain by the time this thing's over with. So I'm going to use the creative side too. So I'm going to use at least as much of my brain as Adam did. Sure. So tethered clothing.
Yes, this Q&A brought to you by
Tethered Clothing.
Tetheredclothing.com.
Yes.
Right now, go to tethered.com.
$7 million for half a minute in the Super Bowl. I don't know what y'all are going to pay me for this. But I am super proud of these kids for doing stuff that I never would have done at 15 years of age. Started my own clothing line. Absolutely. And getting their LLC and getting their... Well, I'm not doing this stuff for them. Sure. They're doing it. They're asking other people. They got wisdom from Rudy last night. They came home. They were blown away by the wisdom that Rudy gave him. And Judah was like, man, Dad, your teaching last night was so awesome. But what Rudy told us changed our life. I said, well, I'm good with that. I want y'all listening to Rudy. Rudy is an amazing story, not just an amazing saxophone player. He's an amazing man, amazing family, and an amazing story. I'm so thankful that he and I are tethered together to see what the Lord's doing.
If you don't know who Rudy is, I'm assuming some may not. Rudy plays the saxophone here for us.
Yes.
At the homestead.
Yes,
here.
he does.
Yes.
Yes, he does. Yes.
This was a question written. I think it would, and I think I know where you would go with this, but I think it would be good for the people to hear. If God is waiting to release blessing on the true version of you,
yes,
then why does it seem like there is blessing on churches that are, this is the language the writer used, in complete delusion?
Mm-hmm. I would say it's an inferior definition of blessing. Because then you're saying, well, Kanye's blessed and he's freaking crazy. No, he's not. No, he's not. That's a wrong definition of blessing. Blessing is initially a witness of wholeness. And I mean, you can sell crack and make a lot of money. You're dated when you bring up crack. Don't anybody even use crack anymore, I don't think. But I'm not real up on what drugs are being used right now. But you can sell drugs and become extraordinarily wealthy. You can run guns and become extraordinarily wealthy. I think it would be an error to call those people blessed. And so numbers are not how you measure blessing, and money's not how you measure blessing, and fame is not how you measure blessing, and influence is not how you measure blessing. My initial measurement for blessing is right here. Right here, right here, and then right here. But it's not, I don't, I mean, you know this about me. I don't track our influence. I don't know how many people watch. I don't know how many people listen. I don't know who gives what. And I mean, I have my hands on the finances to manage them, but I don't live in this place of how do I get more blessing and think in terms of material things. I think that was an inferior mark of blessing on the life of Abraham, because he did not yet have Yeshua to bring him into the fullness of something far more significant than material things. So I don't believe the material things are wrong, but I think they're wrong measurements of blessing. And I think there's a lot of people who got a lot of stuff who weren't whole first. And now Yahweh's looking for the people that are whole, that when he gives the resources to them, not only do they not define them, they hold them very loosely and are able to use them to fuel and resource what it is that he wants to do in the earth. I always say the test of blessing is not what you dream about buying, but what you dream about giving.
Yes, come on.
Is when you think about the resources coming in, do you think about how it's going to change you, or mostly how it's going to change people around you? Will it change you? Of course. There's nothing that's right and good, but it's not the ultimate dream. The ultimate dream is, how do we use this to advance? Did you go get some more stickers, Ethan, so y'all have something to sell? I'm just checking. Yeah, so I think that you look at those and you go, well, these guys are being blessed. Right. And you go, no, I don't really look at the Kardashians and go, that's blessing. Obviously, that's money. But I don't look at that and go, boy, they got it figured out. And I want to look at somebody and go, that man's whole. That woman's whole. There's a witness in their eyes of internal rest, peace that surpasses all understanding, joy. I'm not going to look at somebody that has 10,000 people in their church and whose wife doesn't want to be in the same room as them and be stupid enough to call them blessed.
That's right. That's right.
Amen. That's what you knew that I was going to say that, didn't you?
Yes. Another sort of leadership question. If you know the Father is moving you out of, as they use the term, and you've used it in times previous, the system.
Yeah.
How do you leave well as a leader, especially if you have people wanting to go with you? This is a direct question from someone here.
Okay. You've got people that are wanting to go with you. I think I would need to differentiate. Are you the senior leader wanting to leave?
The idea that the tone of the question did not lend itself to
Okay. Then I'll answer it both ways.
Sure.
So I think if you're a senior leader and Abba is saying to you, it's time to transition and people want to come with you, that's appropriate. I think if you're serving under a senior leader and you're wanting to leave and take people with you, it's inappropriate. So if you've got a little crowd following you and moving them away from the senior leader because you think he's in the system, you need to shut your mouth and sell your house and move away. And if the Lord later on causes those people to come on their own, awesome. I am not a recruiter.
Amen.
If I find out you're moving here, I'm probably going to ignore you. I'll go out of my way to ignore you because I want to make sure My sons can attest to this, that I've done nothing to try to pull people here or get people away. My thought process of this, we've had several senior leaders say, I believe I'm called to go there. If that individual shuts that ministry down and moves here and people come with them, I think that would be completely appropriate. But I think for somebody who's not the senior leader to take people away from that place because you see that God's calling you somewhere else, then you leave with your family alone and you bless and you speak well. Because I'm telling you this, if you caused problems there on your way out, you'll try to cause problems here on your way out. And how you leave one place is how you enter the next. And you need to leave with honor. You take the high road. I don't care what you've seen that you believe it's not your job to uncover the nakedness of that leader. You button your lips and you move out of town and you bless and speak well and thank God for the road you traveled to get you there. And then don't look back. But don't as a second tier leader believe you have any authority to pull other people away from a ministry. Would you agree with that? Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. In light of the revelation that you're receiving, from your perspective, what is the function of the Old Testament?
That's a good question. I believe the Old Testament is so beautiful to me. Almost everything I spoke out of last night was the Old Testament. The Old Testament is so beautiful to me because it's a picture of Israel's willingness, no matter what, to connect with Yahweh when they had no point of reference. The courage of Abraham to go meet with a God completely unknown to him and to build relationship with him. And I say this about Israel, but I can also, I think, say this about the Old Testament, is the womb of the incarnation. Both Israel and the Old Testament. So in the Old Testament, we are not going into the Old Testament to find out what God is like. We're going into the Old Testament to look into the process of people hungering to determine what God was like. Now, we can't look at Job and or his friends and say Job was right or the friends were right because the Bible says that's what God is like. No, the Bible helps us, and mostly Yeshua helps us when he says things like, you've heard it said, but I say. You've heard it said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. And they're going, no. We've heard it said, your dad said. Sure. And he's going, no. Understand that in those theophanies, in those revelations, they were amazing people who were not supposed to have it all right. Nobody has it all right but Jesus. And Jesus has it so completely right that he's able to take people that were going through the glorious, beautiful, courageous process of coming to know who God is. And Jesus takes all of that is good and right, but not completely in focus. And he takes is that clear to you? He takes what's not completely in focus and he's saying, now put these glasses on, Christology, and look at that, and you no longer see types and shadows. Shadows are not the thing. Shadows are what's projected by the thing. And he came to clarify what was a shadow that was supposed to be a shadow until he clarified it. So when I read the Old Testament, I'm enamored by people's courage and willingness to go connect with a God that they know nothing about. In the beginning, don't even have a Torah to start with. Then they get the Torah, and the Torah becomes this guide to try to help and assist them in determining who God was, but it was also a great highlight into who they were not. And Yeshua came to deal with both. Yeshua came to show who Yahweh actually is and who we had the permission to become through the belief and the faith in Yeshua. So I love the Old Testament because I spent a lot of time in the Old Testament. I read the Old Testament, but it now becomes completely Christological for me. So everything I read about the Old Testament, I have to put my Jesus glasses on first. So I let the Holy Spirit usher me back into the Old Testament with Jesus, and then all of a sudden, instead of it being confusing, because if you're a right thinking person, the Old Testament's confusing. If you're a right thinking person, when you read about genocide, something in you should go, this don't sound like a good God to me. No, y'all can't. You're not allowed to think that because the 5-point Calvinist told you what you're allowed to think and not allowed to think. They just file everything under transcendence and sovereignty. Such a cop-out. No, let's go into this and say, where's Jesus in this? And where would Jesus land in this? And the Father is like Jesus. The Father is not like the Old Testament's perspective of who the Father is. Wasn't supposed to be. And I think this happens when we want to make all things equal. And this is called a flat reading of the Scripture. And you and I are not called to a flat reading of the Scripture. We're called to a 4D, interactive, full spectrum revelation of what the Scripture is. Not as a history book, but as an invitation for us to come to know things about Yeshua that we would never know without the Bible. So I love the Old Testament. Tammy and I recently went on vacation. I don't know how much of this I should talk about, but Tammy and Elijah and Judah and I recently went on, I mentioned you on that time you went with us on the vacation. So Elijah and Judah and Tammy and I went on a vacation, and the zip code that we were in, over 40% of the population was Orthodox Jewish in this zip code. And so while we were there, it was very interesting to watch these people interact with the Torah, but also what life looked like. And Tammy was, where's the joy? These people have a covenant with God. And I was like, one thing missing. Yeshua. And he is the thing that changes everything, or the one that changes everything. And if we put him on par with the Old Testament, we'll never understand the Old Testament. So I don't have a low view of the Old Testament. I have a really high view of Christ. And that lets me see the Old Testament through the lens of, man, I'm wrestling things out right now. So I identify with these guys that don't have it all right. I don't want people to take something I wrote 10 years ago and say it's inerrant. And I don't want to look at something they wrote and say that it's inerrant. Jesus is inerrant. And these guys were in the process not of even trying to tell us this is exactly who God is. I don't even think that's what they were trying to do. I think they were telling their own stories. And in telling their own stories, we see people who are courageously grappling with who God is. I don't think I have it all figured out, but I do think Jesus does. And I'm going to continue to go to him to let him instruct me and teach me as to what that's like. But I think it's, I made a statement. I go, well, the Bible's all equal. First of all, the Bible never says that about itself. And it's illegal to use your brain and come up with the conclusion that Lamentations 2 is as important to you as John 15. Look, first of all, Lamentations 2 wasn't written to you. The Torah was not written to you and I. The Torah was written to the Orthodox Jew. What has been written to you and I is Jesus. We used to speak in the language of the law and prophets. Now we speak in the language of Son. So Son is the new language we speak, and you need to take the Old Testament and go into it and read the Son that's hidden all throughout the glory of the beauty. What they're looking for in there is the Messiah. And unfortunately, what they're still looking for, because they missed the Messiah, is a Messiah. And we have been saved. Therefore, we get to go into that text with a lens that gives us the ability to really, I hope even last night, I hope when we take this Old Testament story of being tender and of Jacob, that we're finding Yeshua in all of this and going, here's the real thing. Let's find the real older brother that's worth putting his skin on. I don't have to dress up like Esau. I get to put on Christ. And Christ is not making me something I'm not. He's letting me be the fullness of who I am, because I was created in his image and likeness in the first place. So he's letting me come into the fullness of that I already am. So how hairy do you have to be to a goat skin to mimic? I mean, that's a problem. That's a problem. That's exactly right. That brother needs some estrogen in his diet.
Got some high tea going on. Elevated T levels.
Yeah.
Couple more, you good?
Yeah, I'm great, man.
For those of us, this is directly from one of the people. For those of us, I think I'll know where you're going on this one, but I feel to ask it so they can hear it. For those of us that the Father has asked to remain where we are, to be pioneers of the message of beloved identity, how do we press on when religion is so heavy and ugly in our area?
Yep.
How do we proclaim the true gospel when continually being called heretics?
I would say that you have to get rooted enough in beloved identity to get delivered from the opinions of man. And if you try to announce the message of beloved, it's just the way it is. If you try to announce the message of beloved identity without being rooted in beloved identity, then you're going to, we live in the West. They hate this, except for those that have an ear to hear. For those that have an ear to hear, what is a stumbling block to others is the light, the grace, and the breakthrough for you and I. So first of all, you do not live in a more religious area than I do. So quit doing that where you think it's harder where you are. Every preacher I talk to, it's harder where they are than it is where anybody else. No, it's not any harder there than it is anywhere else. And it's not as hard here as it was in Palestine under the rule of Rome, with Sadducees and Pharisees and scribes who literally would stone you to death for heresy. You're okay. Calm down. And come to the conclusion that the more rooted and established you get in the revelation of beloved identity, the more confident you are to continue to move forward and not be moved by the opinions of other people. Before I was rooted in beloved identity, I was tortured by criticism. But if you're going to announce this, you're going to have to get liberated from the opinions of man. The way you get liberated from the opinions of men is you get immersed in the fear of the Lord. And if the Father is trumpeting and clapping behind me, I really am not moved by what other people have to say about it. And here's the other thing, stay off social media. And you won't know what people are saying about you anyway. I hear people come to me and we're under great persecution. You got 48 people in your church. Who's persecuting you? They don't even know you're there. Like Jimmy trying to throw me under the bus in a Q&A. And I'm like, well, I'm good because I'm pretty sure nobody was listening to you in a Q&A. If Tina was doing the Q&A, then people would have been listening in the Q&A. But it was Jimmy, so who's listening anyway? See? Don't poke the bear, son. Don't poke the bear. I'll give you a lesson in influence right now. So, but I think people look at it and go, we're under great persecution. I think that's relative. And I think if you stay off of social media and you quit trying to defend yourself and you quit trying to make sure everybody knows you're right and they're wrong, it's okay for people to think you're wrong. And most people that throw around the term heresy are not really qualified to know what heresy is or isn't anyway. And if you don't get free from the heresy police, you're never going to say anything worth saying anyway, because there's always going to be a group of people who are stuck in their doctrinal certitude that want you to say exactly what they're saying, and anybody who says anything different than what I'm saying must be in heresy. And I think you just get rooted and established in beloved identity. Now, I'll say this to you. I say this. I think that one of the problems is people want to hear this and regurgitate it without having really ingested it yet. And then you say to them, people are going, I don't know about that. And they're not sure about it because you're not sure about it. Do not make this the hot new thing. Be careful. Be careful, because if you're going to say this stuff, you're going to have to be ready to defend it. And the defense is I am my own hermeneutic. The defense of what I believe is my own transformation. I'm the first petri dish of this message. And the reason I can defend it is because I once was blind, but now I see. I was in the dark and now I'm in the light. I was in misery and now I'm in joy unspeakable. And so I would say to you, be careful that you don't go, whoo, that sounds awesome, I'm going to repeat it. No, and please don't repeat it because you think it makes you sound intellectual. Because being considered intellectual is not near valuable enough for you to go through the hell you're going to go through when people figure out you don't know what you're talking about. I don't mean that in a condescending way at all, but seriously, don't just, go repeating things because it makes you sound deep. We're trying to take things that are deep and make them applicable. I want to be a theological middleman. I want to take things and instead of saying them in such a way that half the world can't understand them because I'm insecure, I want to take things and be able to make them applicable to people who are boots on the ground, living this lifestyle, and let them be able to live this thing out so they can become a light for the community around them. So I don't fight for this doctrine. I just live it. And if you want to come alongside it and live it with me, we're wide open for you to come alongside it and live it with us. And I'm seeing what it's done in sons. I mean, I pick on Jimmy all the time, but I don't know if there's a person I know that's been through a greater personality transformation than Jimmy. And the fruit of that is in his own children. And Jimmy could do it. You give Jimmy's a Marine, like a for real deal legit Marine. And if you gave Jimmy an assignment, that's what he wanted. He'd bench press it and plow through the night and sleep next week. Yes. But his kids didn't want to be around him. And now that's their dad. They're fascinated with him and jump. I remember years ago when this message first began to change Jimmy, and Tina sent me a picture from the beach of Jimmy's oldest son hanging on him in the water. And she said he never would have done that with the old Jimmy. That's the win. That's why we preach what we preach. That's why we preach what we preach. I don't give a crap how many people come to his church. Never ask him how many people come to his church. I don't ask him how much money they got in the bank and how many souls are they winning. Make sure your kids are swimming with you in the ocean. They want to be with dad. My God, don't give me a gospel that causes my kids to fear me the way I fear God. No, sir. Whew. That's the hermeneutic. Jimmy's the hermeneutic. Jimmy's the hermeneutic. The wholeness, the peace, the rest, the enjoyment. Because he knew how to be a soldier better than anybody I knew. He knew how to be a soldier. Now he's learned how to be a father because he's become a son. He now knows how to be a father. Phew. I know this, if the Father has called you to remain, there'll be such grace for you to remain, you won't be able to deny it. And if that grace is not there, you need to go back and question, has the Father actually asked you to remain? Because I'm seeing a lot of people have the courage to shut things down right now, and I'm already dreaming about the relaunch. I believe that many, many, many will come to the place where they go, you know what? I'm going to go get rooted in that. And I'm not going to let a position or a title or a paycheck keep me from going and getting rooted in that. That doesn't mean people aren't called. I don't have a son sitting in here that I don't believe is where they're supposed to be right now. And I would love for every one of them to live here. God knows I would. I'll put them on staff right now, all of them. I will. But I know they are where they're supposed to be. And I know they're creating that culture where they're supposed to be. However, if I thought for a moment they weren't, I wouldn't say stay there and fight. I'd say come home, get rooted and established, and we'll relaunch you in another season. And because I don't want to get too far into this, but there is the reality of shaking the dust off your feet. Jesus didn't say hang around, fight till they get it. He said if there's no honor there, you shake the dust off your feet, you get out of Dodge. That's in the original Dodge. Hallelujah. And let me say this, if you are called to be where you are and you know the Father's given you a word to remain there, here or somewhere, get you a home away from home that you can come and let us help pull those arrows out of your back and love on you, and you can receive the oil and the wine of the presence of Jesus. Find you a place where you can lay it all down and you have no responsibilities and you don't have to worry about who's against you and who's fighting you, and just let us be a home-based, come love on you and bless you and speak life and courage into you. I mean, I have leaders right now, 2 leaders in my life right now that are getting homes here. It's because they want to be here so often. Doesn't mean they're forsaking the assignment somewhere else. It means they recognize, I want to be here, I want my kids to be here, and I believe that's going to invigorate and fuel them for the assignment in the days to come. So we have real estate agents. If you're a real estate agent in Alabama and you go to church at the Homestead, raise your hand, watch this. Fascinating. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Elijah's taking his test right now. So there's a good Taylor's 9, 10, 11, however many we have. We have real estate agents that can help you. Is Jess not in here? So Jess is not in here. She's a real estate agent. Jordan's not in here. Jordan's in the back. He's a real estate agent. So if you see one of these W's on the back of their car with a house around it, real estate agent, track them down, right? I'll sell you a house right now. So, and I don't mean that just for people who are just going to move here permanently. Many are saying, I need a residence there. My dream is for leaders to be able to travel here and not have to pack a bag, because you got a closet with clothes in it, you got a drawer with a toothbrush in it. We happen to live by one of the most beautiful beaches in America, by the way, so you can have a place, you can get away with your family, you can come on Friday nights. If you've got a Sunday morning service, you can still get back on Sunday. Come hang with us all week. Come to Tuesday prayer. God knows you. I'm gonna make a way for my spiritual sons. Anytime they're here, they'll be able to be in the Union University classes with their spouses and just getting more and just hungry for more and just soaking in more. So, the other thing I would say to this, you may have this question on here, and if you do, stop me and ask it, because you can ask it better than I can say it. But how do we extend the roots of the family tree? This has been the whole reason for these extended under the oaks. Is I felt like the Lord spoke a word to me, not until I moved to Mobile, but when I moved to Mobile, the Lord said, it's time to expand the roots of the family tree. And I know for me, and I've mentioned some of this before, but I know for me that can't mean that I have, a relationship with every leader in the room, that I have the phone number. I can't do the silence and stillness thing that's helping me give this message to the earth. By doing that, I have these sons that I have that relationship with, but what happens for the next tier of people? If anybody falls into that category that say, I'm a leader, I need to be connected, I hear what the Lord's doing. And I had something happen to me when this message came to me in 2009, and I had two dreams. One was kind of a vision, the other a dream, where Kenneth Hagin visited me in a dream. Since I've moved to Mobile in 2 years, I've had 3 more. You know about that. I share these with you all the time. Now, what's fascinating about that is I was not influenced by Kenneth Hagin. And I think Kenneth Hagin is amazing. But I remember reading the first Kenneth Hagin book and going, this is doing nothing for me. And I felt like the Lord said, because it did what it was supposed to do so well, that now you don't have to go back and read a book about how God doesn't want us to be sick, because he was faithful. Yes. So there's no insult to like it doesn't move me. No, it did what it was supposed to do. It's the same thing with a Nolan Ball or a different one. If you pioneer well, the next generation shouldn't be pioneers. That's why we named this place the Homestead. If this is a house of pioneering, then the previous generation didn't finish the job. But if the previous generation pioneered, cleared the trail, and said, here it is, then we come establish the homestead and build up on that. Isn't that amazing? So I'm asking the Lord, I'm asking you, I'm asking the Lord, I'm asking people, what is this thing with Kenneth Hagin? Because I'm not a word of faith preacher per se. I'm a faith preacher, but I would not fall into that camp or that categorization. I don't think many of them have as many tattoos as I do, but anyway, I love, I honor, I bless, I send money to, I support, I appreciate, but I'm going, that's not really me. And I felt like the Lord showed me since I've been here what all that Kenneth Hagin stuff was about. And he said he knew how to be a father to people he did not even personally know. And the Lord said many people called him Dad Hagin. Many people called him Pop Hagin. And the Lord said, the reason I have been sending that to you is so that you could get the revelation that it doesn't mean that every person that called Kenneth Hagin Dad Hagin had Kenneth Hagin's phone number. Yet he was fathering culture. And in fathering culture, I believe I'm receiving grace to say, many will begin to come and say, that's a house where there's a father, where I feel safe and where I feel like I'm being invigorated and where this revelation is bringing transformation to my life. Because I think that's the thing with Brother Hagin. Apostle Aaron would be able to speak into this because he was so transformed by Brother Copeland specifically, and Brother Hagin's influence to be able to say, riding down the road in a coffee van selling coffee, listening to cassette tapes of Kenneth Copeland going, my God, where's that been my whole life? And so they were able to honor and get connected. And so I think what the Lord's saying in extending the family roots is, not that I'm going to spend most of the hours of my day personally interacting with leaders, but that we're going to or start a network. Exactly. That's a great way to say that. Not going to start a network, not going to create something where you give a certain amount and I, give you a pin to put on your shirt or a special Bible or something, or a tethered sticker or whatever. They're still $5. I don't care. It's free for you to come. Pay $5 for the sticker. So, but it is to father a culture at large. And I don't think I was so passionate about this that I think I let it stop there. And when I came to Mobile, Yahweh said, it can't stop there. You're going to have to reach now into leaders all over, which is why we have a gathering like this and be able to say, no, you may not have a lot of personal one-on-one interaction on a week-to-week basis. We'll personally interact here, yet we're going to have a family at large where people are saying, that's transformed my life. And listen to this, and I want to get connected to it. And this is a way that we're doing that. We don't have a formal way. There are some things stirring in my heart to where if people needed to ask questions or get in touch, that they'd be able to have sons that were responding to that and bringing those to me when needed. But I mean, we've got a church in Virginia. We've got a church in Georgia. We've got a church in Ohio. We've got a church in Kentucky. We've got a church in Texas. We got a church in Florida. We got another church in Florida that will be here. They'll be here tomorrow. We've got a church in Canada that were not able to be here. We've got a church in Iowa that was not able to be here. So we've got sons all over the place. If you're in one of those areas, go connect with one of them. Build relationship with them. Let me help be a pointer towards those guys. I know them. I trust these men with my wife and children. I trust these women with my wife and children. I know them. My sons are not in affairs. Amen. I'm just going to tell you that right now. You got some other things you're going to follow and go, ha, this is amazing because it's so cool and so hip and so relevant. These people love their wives. If they don't, I'll make them hang around us until they learn how. I'm not saying they're perfect. I'm not saying they'll never make mistakes, but I am saying to you, this is a different culture and that's a whole different world and you can trust that. And I'll raise their wives in such a way that if they did try to step out of the line, they'd kill them, take them out. Just cut their throats, right? I mean, you can think a thought. I'll break you down right now. So, some bad women in here. Paige's muscles are twice the size of Matt's. Go feel her muscles. When you leave, you ask to feel Paige, but she's been carrying 37 children around since she got out of high school. Just four. Since she got out of high school. She graduated from high school, got married, and hadn't quit having babies since. And so she has... They're big now. Wessy's a solid chunk, and she's carrying them around. She got some guns. So if Matt steps out of line, I know before it even gets to me. Paige will drop an atomic elbow on him. But I do want to, in all seriousness, I want to encourage people to say, don't think because you don't have that kind of connection that you don't have access to what the Lord's doing. You do. You're a part of this. It's true. It's why it's free. It's why there's no registration, no paid registration. And all. No, we want to bless you. We want to pour in. Not only are these free, we don't receive an offering. That's right. We won't receive an offering till Thursday night. Now, many of you got the revelation, so you're not going to let it pass without giving. But we don't charge, and we don't even receive an offering. We just pour into you. We're about to feed you a meal, and not going to receive an offering. And so we want to love and bless and honor, because I believe this is something we're called to do. It's not just be here for our local homestead community, but to pour our hearts into leaders, so that we can see leaders be so whole that they can go reflect the light of this gospel of the kingdom wherever it is that they've been assigned. So I want you to feel like you have a home here and that you have a place here. So. Okay. Yes, sir.
As you were finishing up there, Pops, I just had this thought in my heart. I would love for us to conclude before we eat today. We've been going already an hour and 50 minutes before we eat lunch together. But I just had this thing in my heart that you would pray, like even on the heels of that, what you just spoke, a father's blessing
awesome
on the people that are in this room. And I just sense something on that, a measure of grace and impartation coming to.
I'm glad you said that, because I'm going to talk tonight about fathering and about the importance of having a home and the danger of not having one in a lot of ways. And so I'm gonna one up myself on this, and I'm gonna ask my apostle to pray a father's blessing on the people here. Would you welcome my apostle, Aaron Smith, as he comes?
Thank you. Wow. It's moving to see this. I'm grateful. Almighty Yahweh, Father, your love overwhelms us as you have sent us into all our places around this nation, around this world. I thank you for sending me here. and all the people who've been joined to us. I thank you for sending Damon and Tammy into our lives, for us to be able to see that more sending is done. You are so fulfilled in sending, in sending us into our purpose, into our scrolls that you fashioned for us. We're grateful for the words that you've already declared over us, and that they are eternal and they are everlasting. I thank you for my son. I thank you for his establishment, his strength. I thank you more than anything for the power of the love you show forth in him, and for the example of the witness of the gift of peace. That is one of the greatest things. In the agony I saw him in, I knew you had him in your love. I knew you had him in the direction, even though I didn't have any words, I knew what to say to him. All I knew is that you had him, and you had the right people to say the right thing. That the strength of the Father, the greatest strength of a father, is to show the love, to let it finish. Let the work finish that need to be finished. I thank you for this finishing I've seen within Damon, to be able to see the strength that he's able to present and release peace to all those that have strived, to no longer strive, but to be about your Father, to be about the Father's business and all that we're called to do. That fulfills us so much, sir. We're grateful for your sending and your trusting in us. We just do what we see our Father doing now. In the name of Yeshua, amen. And we bless the food, amen.
Come on, let's thank Pops one more time, too, for just taking time with us today.